Have you ever been so excited and immersed in what may be the best start to a game ever? And then, boom, text tutorial. By the time you're done with all this, you should be able to submit one of those Pizza Hut book club voucher thingies. Ooh, I love those. Go ahead and order that pizza because you just hit the wrong button on the Ocarina Owl prompt, so we're gonna be here a while. Hello, my name is Emily Cookie Dough. I'm a game developer and I have a gaming confession. I do not read the tutorials, despite being a designer. But let me be clear, I love playing tutorials. I always try to take in the start of a game and try to understand the vision other developers create in their works. But I feel like I have to draw the line when the encyclopedia gets pasted onto my screen every 5 seconds, when I just want to do something cool. This is my first video essay and the one my Twitch viewers voted on, but this idea has been floating around my mind for a long time. It's a flaw I notice in a lot of modern AAA titles, but also one that hits one of my favorite franchises frequently: Final Fantasy. Tutorials in Final Fantasy are a lot of rules that I wonder how many people actually read any of it. Or do you just rely on what you learned situationally, through the gameplay? Do you know a chest opens with triangle because of the tutorial you read, or because it showed you the button as you approached it? This may not seem like a big deal, but sometimes a bad tutorial isn't just incompetent, it can damage the player experience. So I want to deep dive into what makes each tutorial a bit different and analyze which ones enhanced my experience versus which ones harmed it. We'll be discussing the starting points for all of these games on the screen as a heads up. Let's start with the inspiration for this video, Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy X is one of my favorite games ever made. I highly appreciate the storytelling of the older titles, while personally liking the more action-based ones for my playstyle. A different type of action playstyle, more inspired by Souls-likes, remember this for later, was brought into Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, which is a spin-off of the original Final Fantasy game, in March 2022. The first demo for this title dropped quickly after its reveal in 2021, and I immediately rushed to download it. An important note here is I played mostly adventure games and single-player RPGs, with the exception of turn-based ones for Final Fantasy. Not hardcore action difficulty-based ones. This demo was my first step into that gameplay as someone that didn't know how to play the genre. The tutorial puts you in a field and simply shows you text box after text box of instructions. You perform the combos X amount of times, then you move on to the next. Rinse and repeat for a few minutes, and then they throw you into the game. My fortress of a mind rejected this intel and immediately forgot everything upon actually starting to play, leading to a lot of deaths I didn't understand why they were happening. After an hour, I put down the controller and opened social media expecting to see the public destroying this demo. I was convinced that Square had fumbled worse than they ever had before, and I found out people loved it. Specifically fans of this genre, who already knew the basic game language and strategies to use, loved how it was applied to the universe. But I struggled so much with not being able to understand what was happening that sadly I never picked up the title. But this is a barrier that exists not just for the genre, but for most AAA titles, and for most of the Final Fantasy franchise. Take Remake and Rebirth's demos, both very well received. They too consist of the dreaded big boxes of text. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to realize how they really utilize synergy attacks, so the system itself has been flawed for a long time. It gets the job done, sure, but loses a few potential fans along the way. I do think there's some ways that these tutorials excel where Stranger of Paradise failed though. For starters, the Final Fantasy VII Remake demos have you moving through iconic spaces in a linear mission setting. You are being told by your team what the goal is, and it fits narratively. When a tutorial pops up, you are already in an appropriate space to learn the mechanic, versus an isolated field. and the linear design of these tutorials ensures you don't get sidetracked. You also keep using these mechanics throughout the rest of the mission. I wouldn't call it the best tutorial ever made because I had to sit there and process it, but these demos were able to back up their explanations with contextual gameplay. If we want to talk about contextual gameplay, Nintendo is the master of game design. The first Super Mario Bros. Game just has a few buttons and you learn what to do instantly via trial and error. Jumping is the main thing you do in the game, so there's a reason the first enemy you face is a Goomba, and the first power-up is in a box just at jumping level. You are taught the mechanics of when to jump, not simply how to jump. If they opened with the box up higher or a flying enemy that punished the player for jumping, it would teach an entirely different and more punishing design. Granted, this is a much simpler title from the arcade age, but look at the level design gold that's the Metroid series. Metroid Dread is a difficult game, yet as a newer player I was able to 100% it, because all the mechanics I needed to know were laid out for me very clearly in the beginning. Rooms with power-ups are made so that you can enter them normally one way, but must use your new abilities to get out. The first area's game loop has you start in this room, and then you loop back here with new powers that can unlock things you couldn't on your first walkthrough. Metroidvanias are defined by your ability to backtrack, and the devs made sure you could navigate around spaces via good design and art, rather than holding your hand and overloading the screen with tips. Nintendo just knows how to let you play the game and learn from experience instead of telling you a bunch of info in the hopes you digest it for later. Splatoon has very quick tutorials, and they added a lobby for you to practice in during match queues. While Animal Crossing is a lot of text, sure, it's through villager interactions and not overlaying UI. And going back to the intuitive tutorials, The Legend of Zelda, the original one, lets players explore the vast overworld without spelling out every puzzle and mechanic. Speaking of... Okay, disclaimer. I know mentioning Zelda on the internet causes people to raise their pitchforks, so just let me clarify. I've played most of the games. I own Hyrule Historia. My big three are Wind Waker, Breath of the Wild, and Link's Awakening. I love all genres of Zelda. I'm not pitting my babies against each other. I only do that type of torture in The Sims. We good? Anyways, while I adore both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I think one game has a nearly perfect tutorial, and while the other is great, the pacing and how it works as a direct sequel causes it to falter a bit more in my mind. Breath of the Wild had the high task of being a tutorial for this entire genre of Zelda games. 3D Zelda isn't really one thing or the other, but the previous 3D games were mostly linear in terms of the world, narrative, and item progressions. This was the first truly 3D open world game, shout out to Wind Waker though, and it was meant to almost serve as a remake of the original title. But how do you teach generations of previous Zelda players what the new formula looks like in an open space? How do you bring in a new crowd? The opening has an EP Link with amnesia, so he's in the same position we are in as players. He's guided by Zelda's voice, so we already assume our end goal of the game is to find her. But the urgency of it isn't as severe as figuring out what the hell's going on first. In this first small space you are taught movement, the tablet visual language to look for in the environment, interaction, equipping armor, and what the youth don't realize was revolutionary, the jump button. They give you a short wall to climb up, so this doubles as a climbing tutorial. Then the big vista shot and the title is dropped. The pacing is uninterrupted for learning all the basics. Then after that, you get your ass beat by bokoblins, learn how weapon durability works, Old Peapot is your guide and lore dropper, towers are unlocked, abilities and shrines are tutorialized, guardians are introduced, goddess statues are used, and at the end of it all, you finally get your glider to get down to the surface. And the excitement doesn't end there because there are horses just waiting to be caught down the road from your first stable. You can do any objective you want now and go anywhere, but you are suggested to go see Impa, and along the way you are very likely to run into Zora that will point you towards that quest line first, which is easier and has the strongest ability for early game. It's just all so chef's kiss that I didn't even realize how much the game design had worked its magic on my goober mind until I finished playing it. The entire game is built around being a Zelda-themed survival sandbox. If Breath of the Wild is a survival sandbox, Tears of the Kingdom is creative mode. This entry is a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild and starts with a linear descent underneath Hyrule Castle. Originally, I thought this would just be a cutscene, but being able to walk through the space with Zelda at your side and the music increasing in intensity really puts it together. Basic movement is taught, the environment is foreshadowing for the story and a huge clue as to where you end your journey, and combat is taught as you defend Zelda. The stakes are perfect and the tension is building to the cutscene. It's another perfect tutorial. And then you lose Zelda. Link wakes up on a floating island with 3 hearts and a weak weapon. Now we're in the actual tutorial. The tutorial formula is mostly the same as Breath of the Wild from here on out. Wake up, weapon and movement tutorials, banger vista, where's my wife, Peepaw guidance, shrines, abilities, statues, where's wife, map enhancements, glider, narratives, whoa, where's my wife? Now, Breath of the Wild starts with us needing to save Zelda, yeah, but while I do anything for her just like Link, we have to pause. We don't know much about her in that game or the world we're in. We need a tutorial and a guide at that point. By Tears of the Kingdom though, Zelda has a deeper bond to us as players, and she was just walking right next to us an hour ago. The urgency to find her is a lot stronger, but the tutorial we get before going to the surface is much longer. Instead of the excitement building through the tutorial, sometimes it's a bit of impatience. The plot points we get here are incredibly good though, and the level design, especially for mechanics like rewind and ascend, are crafted by the goddesses, I swear. Almost everything is super intuitive, so there's no shame in the beats being the same as Breath of the Wild. Almost everything. These little robots, I want to love them so badly, as they remind me of Skyward Sword. But they are the masters of Yap. The lore drop 3000s. Remember the title of the video? I don't like to read tutorials. That's why I love Zelda games. I get to figure out puzzles from the gameplay and the visuals of what I can and can't interact with. These guys drop tutorials on Zonite and other related items, not just now, but throughout the entire game. None of that's been established in any gameplay, so we just have to stand in place and let them blab to you for a minute, and none of that info soaked in for me. Most of the stuff they talk about is easy to use, sure, but it's also incredibly missable. I never found how to upgrade your battery in my first playthrough, so I beat the game with nothing. Because the forge is outside of your hub down, sure, but it's outside of it, elevated off of the road and facing away from you. I know I had been told about it at some point, but I had just never visually put the pieces together. So even just positioning some things better, condensing the dialogue, or adding simple animations of them idle, upgrading their batteries and producing charges in the mines would have helped with that. Again, I love all Zelda games, so this didn't ruin my experience, but I am curious how many people missed out on more crafting opportunities, which is the highlight of this game, because of wordy context like this. The damaging part was that the forge constructs seem like the logical place to upgrade your battery, since you convert everything into materials for that anyway here, and you are told you can upgrade your battery. But then you just never can at these spots, and I and many others played assuming it would surely unlock here eventually. So misleading tutorialization can be just as dangerous as no tutorialization. What about ending on a title that walks that line of misleading in terms of tutorialization? For our last title today, I want to bring the Souls-like combo from earlier full circle with my actual first playthrough of a From Software game, Elden Ring. When most think of Elden Ring's tutorial, it's because of the fact that it's not just optional, but missable. It's not just something you can knowingly skip, but something the game lets you walk by without saying, wait, here's the tutorial. And I'm not here to say if that's right or wrong, because as a level designer, that feels like a huge sin. But it is beautifully genius. Not something that should be widely adopted, if at all, but I love intuitive areas where what you get scales with your curiosity. The entirety of Elden Ring is built like that, so isn't it right to teach that via the tutorial being missable as well? But that's actually not what I thought of when I first started writing this video. As a new player, it took a lot of learning, but I was able to get the hang of things by playing that tutorial because it moved me throughout the space, unlike Stranger. But my troubles lied with whenever new items were introduced. I had a tough time knowing what each finger thingy-mabob did and how to use them. Only context given was through a short text description. I'm not close to done yet, but my experience with streaming has had folks letting me know that there are some items you simply have to look up to find or even know what's going on. Because even though there are context clues, they are very hard to randomly come across. So obviously I think the barrier for entry is a little higher here compared to other games. Even though it's not a sequel, it's using an existing game design language that I'm new to. I think this game tutorializes something expertly: the world building. This game teaches you to explore so perfectly, but it never tells you directly to do that. In fact, you are told the outline of your quest in the opening cutscene. By all accounts, you should be beelining for the correct path, right? Along the way, you'll keep seeing amazing things in the environment that take you off the path. You'll find legendary bosses, meet captivating and hateful NPCs, and important equipment for your journey. But you're never explicitly told any of this. No quest log, objective markers, sidekicks, nothing. It's all simply cause and effect. You explore the world because you are on an adventure, and the designers teach you the ins and outs by luring you with the temptation of a hero's journey. Like I mentioned earlier, this does have drawbacks in guaranteeing players learn and see everything, but it does ensure every tarnish plays exactly as they want. In conclusion, all of these games do in fact use text on the screens at different points in their tutorials. But it all comes down to context and pacing, which is what game design is all about. A quick and to the point pop-up that's related to the space I'm in and doesn't hold up the plot is a much better teacher than being bombarded with tutorial and tutorial and tutorial. While gathering the footage for this video, I realized Final Fantasy has really been trying to improve on this, at least in their demos over time. Where their older titles were wordier, their newer ones try to put you in the action as soon as possible, even with the heavy text use. And I figured out replaying the start of the Zelda titles that Tears of the Kingdom pauses you and forces you to listen to tutorials a lot more than Breath of the Wild, which was a major contributor to my feelings between the two. And while I was very confused at first, and by all means that should mark for a poor tutorial, in Elden Ring, the silent way the grace points guide me through the world and the interacting forces that inhabit it taught me way more than could ever be expressed via a prompt. My favorite tutorials have had me playing the game to learn more about it, with UI elements and text pop-ups being supplemental ways to help, rather than the primary ones. I love game development, so I know that tutorials are honestly one of the hardest things to deliver in a game. An early mistake is to make the tutorial first, rather than at the end of development when you know the mechanics, designs, and important visuals of your world are solidified. I know it's an early mistake because I've made it myself, but I also love playing video games. Playing being the crucial part here. There's nothing wrong with tutorials explaining and spelling things out with text box and dialogues. However, the experience must go hand in hand with strong and informative gameplay. The text should add clarification to the situation, not be the sole deliverer of that info. Tutorial text boxes can feel like overwrapping a child in bubble wrap before teaching them how to ride a bike. Sure, they won't get hurt, but they won't enjoy the experience much either. Let them experience your game. Better yet, let them fail while playing your game. It makes all the victories, big and small, a lot more worth it. If you watched that whole nerd yapping, then thank you. I have a follow-up in about a month focused on storytelling through gameplay. I actually had a huge indie game section in this video that I cut because I think it'll shine better in that part too. Like I mentioned, I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan, including Kingdom Hearts, a big Nintendo fan, and I'm also currently playing Elden Ring for the first time ever over on my Twitch. I'll link the compilation of my Elden Ring journey so far. Until next time, take care of yourselves.